Picture this with me for a moment. A young eagle, safe and secure in its nest, high above the world. The mother eagle brings food, keeps it warm, protects it from harm. Everything the eagle needs is provided. Comfortable, protected, safe. But here's the fascinating thing about eagles. There comes a point when that mother eagle does something that, to an outside observer, might seem cruel. She begins to tear apart that carefully constructed nest, piece by piece. She makes it increasingly uncomfortable for that young eagle to stay. Why would a mother do such a thing? Because she understands a profound truth that many of us humans have forgotten. True growth begins at the edge of our comfort zone. How many of you here today feel blessed with a loving, supportive family? Raise your hands. Beautiful. Now, how many of you have ever felt that same loving support holding you back from taking a necessary risk? And keep those hands up if you've ever heard. Why would you want to leave your secure job? Starting a business is too risky. Why move so far away from home? That tension you're feeling right now, that's exactly what we need to talk about today. Because sometimes the very love that nurtures us can become the chains that bind us. Let me share a story that changed my perspective forever. In the summer of 1985, I met Sarah, a brilliant young woman working at her family's successful restaurant business in Chicago. She had dreams of becoming a photographer, had even been offered a prestigious apprenticeship in New York. But there she was, night after night, managing the restaurant's books, handling the evening rush, living someone else's dream. "I can't leave," she told me, her eyes fixed on the worn pages of the account book. "They've given me everything. They depend on me. This restaurant put me through college. How could I be so selfish?" The word selfish, it's fascinating how we've turned this word into a weapon against our own growth. And we use it to keep ourselves small, to justify staying in our comfort zones. But here's a truth that might shake you. Sometimes the most selfless thing you could do is be selfish. Think about it. When you're on an airplane, what does the flight attendant tell you about oxygen masks? Put your own mask on first before helping others. Why? Because you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't truly serve others if you're suffocating your own potential. Take a moment right now. Close your eyes. Think about that dream you've been holding back, that idea you've been too afraid to pursue, that change you've been postponing. What's the loving voice that's been telling you to play it safe? Family support becomes destructive when it prioritizes comfort over growth, security over fulfillment, the known over the unknown. It's like a greenhouse that protects a plant from the elements but also prevents it from developing the strength to survive in the real world. Consider the butterfly emerging from its cocoon. If you, out of compassion, help it by cutting open the cocoon, you've actually condemned it to death. The struggle to emerge is what fills its wings with fluid, giving it the strength to fly. By trying to help, you've robbed it of its essential development. This is what well-meaning family support often does. It shields us from necessary struggles. It cushions us from essential failures. It whispers, "Stay safe," when our soul is screaming, "Take flight." But here's where it gets tricky. This isn't about rejecting family support or burning bridges. It's about understanding that true family support should look more like the mother eagle's wisdom than the greenhouse's protection. Real support isn't about keeping someone comfortable. It's about encouraging them to grow beyond their comfort zone. It's not about preventing falls. It's about teaching them how to get back up. It's not about eliminating risks. It's about building the confidence to take calculated ones. If you knew with absolute certainty that your family would eventually be proud of your choices, even if they don't understand them right now, what would you do differently? What step would you take today? The most devastating form of family support is the kind that comes with invisible strings attached. The subtle expectations, the unspoken obligations, the silent guilt. It's like golden handcuffs, comfortable but still handcuffs. I've counseled countless individuals who achieved every goal their family set for them. The right degree, the right job, the right neighborhood, only to wake up one day feeling like strangers in their own lives. They did everything right, according to someone else's definition of right, and in the process, they lost themselves. Remember Sarah from the restaurant? 2 years after our conversation, I received a postcard from New York. She had taken the leap. The first months were terrifying. Her family was hurt, disappointed, angry even. But on that postcard was a photograph she'd taken, now hanging in a small gallery in Brooklyn. And these words, for the first time in my life, I'm scared and happy at the same time. I think that means I'm growing. Your family's love is a gift, but it shouldn't be a cage. Their support should be a launching pad, not a comfort zone. Their wisdom should be a guidebook, not a rule book. The truth is, every time you deny your own growth for the sake of others' comfort, you're not just holding yourself back, you're depriving the world of your unique contributions. You're silencing the voice that only you have, hiding the gifts that only you can give. Think about your own life right now. Where are you choosing comfort over growth? Where are you letting someone else's fear drown out your own courage? Where are you calling dependence loyalty and calling fear responsibility? The most profound way to honor those who have supported you is not to live within the boundaries they've set, but to use the foundation they've given you to build something beyond what they could imagine. Your growth might make them uncomfortable, and that's okay. Real love can handle temporary discomfort for the sake of authentic growth. Let me share something with you about trees. In nature, when trees grow too close together, something fascinating happens. Their roots become entangled, their branches interweave, and while this might seem like perfect harmony, it actually stunts their growth. Each tree ends up fighting for sunlight, for nutrients, for space to expand. Some trees even alter their natural growth patterns to accommodate others, growing crooked or stunted rather than tall and strong. This is exactly what happens in families when support becomes suffocation. We become so intertwined that we can't tell where one person's dreams end and another's expectations begin. We grow in twisted ways to accommodate everyone else's needs, forgetting that straight, true growth requires space. Back in 1992, I encountered a remarkable man named Robert. He was 45 years old, working in his father's hardware store, the same store his grandfather had started. 3 generations of family history, tradition, and expectations rested on his shoulders. Robert had a passion for teaching, a gift for connecting with young minds. Every summer, he would volunteer at local youth programs, and his eyes would light up when he talked about those experiences. But year after year, he stayed at the hardware store. It's a family legacy, he would say. My father worked his whole life to keep this store running. How can I just walk away from that? The weight of family legacy had become his prison, and obligation had masked itself as dedication. The most dangerous chains are the ones we can't see. They're made of phrases like, "But we've always done it this way, and what will people think?" And "After everything we've done for you." These chains are forged in love, but strengthened by fear. Fear of disappointing others, fear of being selfish, fear of the unknown. You see, there's a profound difference between gratitude and indebtedness. Gratitude empowers. Indebtedness imprisons. When family support transforms into a debt that must be repaid through compliance, it becomes toxic. It's like being given a beautiful gift, only to be reminded of it every time you try to make a choice for yourself. Consider the story of Marie Curie. Had she listened to her family's well-intentioned concerns about a woman pursuing science in the 19th century, had she stayed within the boundaries of what was considered appropriate and safe for her time, we might have waited decades longer for crucial discoveries in radioactivity. Sometimes the greatest act of love we can show our families is to prove their fears wrong. The support that truly nurtures growth is the kind that says, "We love you enough to let you find your own way." It's the support that understands that your life is yours to live, your mistakes are yours to make, and your successes will be all the sweeter because you earned them yourself. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. The guilt can be overwhelming. Every phone call home becomes an exercise in emotional endurance. Every family gathering turns into a subtle reminder of the paths not taken. The way forward isn't about cutting ties or burning bridges. It's about redefining relationships. You must understand that your growth might temporarily disappoint those you love, but your stagnation will permanently disappoint yourself. Your family's disapproval of your choices is far less painful than the slow death of living someone else's life. Think about a garden for a moment. When plants are first starting to grow, they need protection from the elements. But if you never remove that protection, if you never let them face the wind and rain, they'll never develop the strength to stand on their own. They'll remain forever dependent, forever fragile. Many of us are living in emotional greenhouses built by our families. The temperature is perfectly controlled. The environment is predictable, and everything we need is provided. But at what cost? The cost of never knowing our own strength. The cost of never discovering what we're truly capable of. There's a story of a man who visited a butterfly sanctuary. He watched as a butterfly struggled to emerge from its cocoon, and feeling compassionate, he decided to help. He carefully cut open the cocoon to free the butterfly. But instead of flying away, the butterfly fell to the ground, its wings shriveled and weak. What he didn't know was that the struggle to emerge from the cocoon is what forces fluid into the butterfly's wings, giving them the strength to fly. His help, though well-intentioned, had crippled the butterfly. This is perhaps the most crucial understanding we need to reach. Sometimes the most loving thing our families can do for us is to let us struggle. And sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves is to allow that struggle. The journey of growth often requires us to disappoint the people we love most, not because we want to hurt them, but because the alternative is to disappoint ourselves every single day for the rest of our lives. It requires us to accept that their pain in watching us take risks is less important than our pain in never taking them. Remember Robert from the hardware store? In 1994, he finally made his decision. He sold his share of the store to his younger cousin, who loved the business, and he became a high school teacher. The first year was rough. Family gatherings were tense. His father barely spoke to him. But gradually something beautiful happened as his family saw him truly come alive in his new role, as they witnessed the impact he was having on young lives, their resistance. His father later admitted, "I was wrong. I wanted to protect your future, but I was really just protecting my past." This is the wisdom we must embrace. Protection of the past should never come at the cost of the future. Growth is not a betrayal of family support. It's the ultimate fulfillment of it. Every parent who has ever worked hard to provide opportunities for their children must understand that those opportunities might lead their children down unexpected paths. Every sacrifice made for the next generation is rendered meaningless if that generation is not free to choose its own way forward. The truth that we must all eventually face is the greatest gift our families can give us is not protection from life's challenges, but the confidence to face them. Not a shield from all harm, but the strength to endure and overcome it. Not a map with their path clearly marked, but the courage to forge our own. Let's talk about the mask we wear. The smiles we put on at family gatherings while our dreams slowly suffocate. The nods of agreement when our hearts are screaming in protest. The careful conversations where we edit ourselves to maintain peace. These masks, these compromises, they're slowly poisoning our souls. In 1988, I met an extraordinary woman named Helen. She was 52 years old, sitting in her corner office at a prestigious law firm. By all external measures, she was successful. 3 decades of practicing corporate law, a partner in the firm respected by her peers. But when she spoke, her words carried the weight of 3 decades of denied passion. "My mother was a single parent," Helen told me. "She worked 2 jobs to put me through law school. She was so proud when I got my degree when I joined the firm. How could I tell her that every morning I have to force myself to walk through those office doors? That what I really want, what I've always wanted, is to open a small bookstore and write children's stories?" Helen's story is not unique. It's the story of countless individuals who've allowed family gratitude to become a cage. They've turned their parents' sacrifices into a life sentence, serving time in careers and lives that don't belong to them. But here's what we often force. Our parents' sacrifices were not made so we could live their dreams. They were made so we could have the freedom to pursue our own. When we choose safety over authenticity out of gratitude, we're misunderstanding the very nature of their gift. Consider the metaphor of a master archer teaching their child. They might start by helping the child hold the bow, positioning their stance, guiding their aim. But if the child's ever to become a true archer, there must come a moment when they draw the bow alone, when they choose their own target, when they release the arrow according to their own timing. The master's role is not to shoot the arrow for them forever. It's to give them the skills to shoot for themselves. The most insidious aspect of destructive family support is how it masquerades as love. It says, we just want what's best for you, but means we want what we think is best for you. It says, we're just trying to protect you, but means we're protecting our idea of who you should be. Let me share something profound about gardens again. When you plant seeds too close together, even if you provide the best soil, the most careful watering, the perfect amount of sunlight, they will still strangle each other. Each plant needs its own space to extend its roots to reach for the sky in its own way. No amount of nurturing can overcome the fundamental need for space to grow. This is what happens in families where support becomes suffocation. We're planted too close together, our roots tangled, fighting for emotional space to grow. The soil of family love is rich, but without room to grow independently, we wither. In 2001, I encountered a young man named Michael at a crossroads. His family had run a successful restaurant for 2 generations. His older sister was already working there, carrying on the tradition. Everyone expected Michael to join the family business. The path was clear, safe, and completely wrong for him. Michael had a gift for technology. In his spare time, he taught himself programming, staying up late into the night building websites and applications. His eyes would light up when he talked about the possibilities of the emerging internet. But his family saw it as a hobby, a distraction from his real responsibility to the family business. The pressure was subtle but constant. The restaurant needs you. This is your heritage. We've worked so hard to build this for you. Each word was a brick in the wall between Michael and his true calling. One day, Michael made a decision that shook his family to its core. He declined his place in the family business and accepted a junior position at a tech startup. The family reactions ranged from disappointment to anger to accusations of betrayal. His father didn't speak to him for months. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. That tech startup grew. Michael's innovative ideas flourished in an environment that encouraged growth rather than conformity. 5 years later, he had founded his own successful tech company. And the most beautiful part, he developed a reservation and ordering system that transformed his family's restaurant, bringing it into the digital age, saving them countless hours and increasing their profits substantially. This is the paradox of growth. It's sometimes we can best serve our families by seemingly turning away from them. By becoming fully ourselves, we bring back gifts they never could have imagined. The love that truly nurtures growth is the kind that says, your dreams may be different from what we imagined for you, but they are no less valid. It's the support that understands that the greatest act of gratitude is not to live the life others have planned for us, but to live the life that honors our true nature. Think about the ocean for a moment. When a wave rises, it must leave the ocean's surface behind. But in rising, in taking its unique form, does it become any less a part of the ocean? No. It expresses the ocean's nature in its own unique way. This is what authentic growth looks like. We don't abandon our roots by growing. We express them in new and powerful ways. The most profound risk in life is not the risk of disappointing others. It's the risk of reaching the end of our lives and realizing we never truly lived. It's looking back and seeing only a shadow of what could have been, a ghost of our true potential. Every time we choose comfort over growth, safety over authenticity, others' expectations over our own truth, we're not just betraying ourselves, we're betraying the very purpose of family support. Because true family support, in its highest form, is not about creating replicas of the past. It's about nurturing unique expressions of the future. There's a moment in every person's life when they stand at the crossroads between who they are and who they're expected to be. It's a moment of profound clarity when we realize that the path of least resistance, the path of pleasing others, leads to a destination we don't want to reach. Let me tell you about David, a story that still moves me deeply. In 1979, David was a promising young musician. His fingers could make a piano sing in ways that brought tears to people's eyes. But he also came from a long line of doctors, 3 generations of respected physicians who had built a legacy of healing and service. The pressure wasn't spoken. It didn't need to be. It was in the medical journals, casually left on his desk. It was in the proud stories of his grandfather's medical breakthroughs, his father's dedicated service to the community. It was in the way his mother's eyes would mist over when she talked about our family's calling. David did what many of us do. He compromised. He told himself he could do both. He would become a doctor and keep music as a hobby, a reasonable solution, right? But here's what happens when we compromise our core truth. We don't just dim our light, we slowly extinguish it. 10 years later, I met David again. He was a successful physician, respected by his peers, trusted by his patients. He had a beautiful office with his family name on the door. And in the corner of that office sat a small electronic keyboard covered in dust. He hadn't played in months. When he spoke about music now, it was in the past tense, like talking about a departed friend. The tragedy wasn't that David became a doctor. The tragedy was that he let someone else's dream override his own. He allowed the weight of family expectation to crush his authentic voice. But this story has an unexpected twist. In 1992, David's father fell ill. During the long hours at the hospital, David found himself drawn to the piano in the hospital lobby. Late at night, when the corridors were quiet, he would play, slowly at first, like someone remembering a forgotten language. But soon the music flowed again. Patients would emerge from their rooms to listen. Staff would find excuses to pass by. And one night, David's father heard him play for the first time in years. The next morning, his father said something that changed everything. I thought we were preserving a legacy, but we were burying one instead. True legacy isn't about continuing what others have built. It's about building on the foundation they provided to create something uniquely our own. The greatest honor we can give to those who supported us is not to live their dreams, but to use their support as a launching pad for our, consider the metaphor of a mighty river, the source of the river. Its family, if you will, provides the initial flow, the direction, the essential elements. But as the river grows, it must carve its own path. It must flow around new obstacles, discover new territories, create its own tributaries. If it tried to stay exactly as it began, it would be. The most dangerous form of family support is the kind that treats us like extensions of someone else's journey rather than pioneers of our own. It's the support that says we know what's best rather than we trust you to find what's best. It's the love that conditions acceptance on compliance. The greatest gift we can give our families is not our compliance, but our authenticity. Not our obedience, but our growth. Not our submission to their fears, but our courage to move beyond them. In 1995, I met Sarah, a young woman who had spent years trying to fit herself into the mold her family had created for her. She came from a family of teachers, grandmother, mother, aunts, all educators. Teaching was more than a profession in her family. It was an identity. But Sarah's passion was business. She had an entrepreneur's mind, a natural talent for seeing opportunities and creating solutions. Every family gathering became an exercise in defending her choices. Teaching is such a noble, it's stable, secure. Why would you want to take such risks? What her family couldn't see was that their well-intentioned guidance was actually fear in disguise. They weren't protecting her future. They were protecting themselves from their own unfaced fears about risk and change. The turning point came when Sarah realized something profound. Her family's fear of her failure was actually a reflection of their love. But love that's filtered through fear becomes distorted. It becomes a cage rather than wings. She made a decision that would transform not just her life, but her entire family's understanding of support. She started her own educational technology company. She took the values her family had instilled, the importance of education, the desire to make a difference, and expressed them in her own unique way. The first years were challenging. There were failed attempts, tight budgets, and countless moments of doubt. But something remarkable happened. As her family watched her persist, as they saw her pick herself up after each setback, their fear began to transform into admiration. Their protection began to shift into pride. Today, Sarah's company provides innovative learning tools to schools across the country. She's impacting more students than she ever could have in a single classroom. And her family, they've learned that love can take many forms, that legacy can be honored through innovation as well as tradition. This is what growth looks like when we refuse to let family support become family suppression. It's not about rejection or rebellion. It's about transformation. It's about taking the values, the strength, the love that our families gave us and using them to create something new, something uniquely our own. The most profound way to honor those who supported us is not to live within their limitations, but to use their support to transcend those limitations. Every parent who has ever sacrificed for their child's education did so not just for the degree, but for the freedom that education could provide. Every family that has ever built something valuable did so not just for it to be preserved, but for it to be built upon. As we draw our journey together to a close, let's talk about the ultimate truth of growth. It's not a single decision, but a series of small, brave choices made day after day. It's choosing authenticity when conformity would be easier. It's choosing growth when comfort calls. It's choosing truth when silence would be simple. In 2010, I encountered Thomas, a story that perfectly encapsulates this journey. Thomas worked in his family's construction business, a third-generation company that had built half the homes in their small town. Every morning, he would put on his hard hat, just as his father and grandfather had done. Every evening, he would return home covered in the same dust that had covered them. But Thomas had a vision that his family couldn't see. He saw the future of construction, sustainable materials, energy-efficient designs, homes that worked with nature instead of against it. Every time he tried to introduce these ideas, he was met with the same response. This is how we've always done it. Why fix what isn't broken? The tragedy wasn't in the resistance to his ideas. The tragedy was in the slow death of innovation, the gradual surrender of vision to tradition. But Thomas made a decision that would reshape not just his future, but the future of his family's legacy. He started small. He didn't quit dramatically or make grand pronouncements. Instead, he began documenting everything: energy costs, material waste, client requests for eco-friendly options. He built a case not just with passion, but he showed his family not just what could be different, but why it needed to be different. The transformation wasn't overnight. It was 3 years of persistent patient advocacy, 3 years of standing in the uncomfortable space between respect for tradition and the call of innovation. But gradually, something remarkable happened. The business began to change, not through rebellion or rejection, but through evolution. Today, that same family business is known as a pioneer in sustainable construction. They haven't abandoned their legacy. They've expanded it. They haven't rejected their foundations. They built upon them. Growth doesn't require us to demolish our foundations. It requires us to build upon them in new and powerful ways. The support our families gave us wasn't meant to be a ceiling. It was meant to be a foundation. Think about a tree for a moment. The strongest trees are those with deep roots and high branches. The roots are family values. Their support, their sacrifices give us stability. But the branches, our dreams, our innovations, our unique expression, reach for new heights. We don't have to choose between roots and branches. We need both. The most damaging lie we tell ourselves is that growth means rejection. That to become who we're meant to be, we must reject who we've been. That to honor our dreams, we must dishonor our roots. This is the false dichotomy that keeps so many of us trapped. True growth is not about rejection. It's about integration. It's about taking the strength our families gave us and using it to forge new paths. It's about taking their lessons and applying them in new ways. It's about understanding that the greatest way to honor their sacrifices is to use them as a foundation for something even greater. In 1983, I met Maria, a young woman from a family of small business owners. Her parents had started with a single corner store and built it into a chain of successful local markets. Everyone expected Maria to take over the business, to continue the story they had written. But Maria had a different vision. She saw beyond physical stores to the emerging world of e-commerce. She understood that the real legacy of her family wasn't the stores themselves. It was their entrepreneurial spirit, their commitment to serving their community, their courage to build something new. The resistance was intense. We built something real. Her father would say, you want to trade it for something virtual, but Maria understood something profound. She wasn't betraying their legacy. She was expanding it. She wasn't rejecting their lessons. She was applying them in a new context. The transformation wasn't easy. There were arguments, tears, periods of silence. But Maria did something remarkable. She kept showing up. She didn't let disagreement become disconnection. She didn't let fear become distance. She stayed present, remained loving, even while standing firm in her truth. Today, her online marketplace connects local producers with customers across the country. She hasn't abandoned her family's values. She's given them wings. She hasn't rejected their legacy. She's transformed it. The heart of what we've been exploring today, the most profound way to honor those who supported us is not to live within their limitations, but to use their support to transcend those limitations. Every parent who has ever sacrificed for their child's future did so, not just for security, but for possibility. Your growth is not a betrayal. Your authenticity is not an insult. Your courage to forge your own path is not a rejection of the path that led you here. It is, in fact, the ultimate fulfillment of every sacrifice, every support, every hope that was invested in you. The greatest gift you can give to those who have supported you is not your compliance, but your flourishing. Not your obedience, but your authenticity. Not your submission to their fears, but your transcendence of them. Every time you choose growth over comfort, authenticity over approval, courage over conformity, you're not just changing your own story, you're expanding the possibilities for every generation that follows. You're showing them that love can be both roots and wings. That support can be both foundation and launch pad. That family can be both origin and inspiration. Your journey of growth might make others uncomfortable. It might challenge their assumptions, trigger their fears, question their certainties. But in the end, the greatest act of love you can show is to become fully, magnificently, authentically yourself. Because when you do, when you find the courage to grow beyond the boundaries of familiar support, when you dare to express your unique truth, when you brave the temporary pain of growth over the permanent pain of suppression, you don't just transform your own life, you transform the very meaning of family support from a cage that confines to a foundation that launches us toward our highest possibilities. The choice is yours. The time is now. And the world is waiting for the unique gift that only you can give, the singular story that only you can tell, the extraordinary contribution that can only come through your authentic growth. Your family gave you roots. Now give yourself wings.